Significance breeds success. This week, my name is Daniel Puder. Today, I have somebody that is going to give you a perspective that might change your life if you listen to the whole thing. What I find is looking at Stu Massengill's website, what he's done online, videos. He is linked with Tony Robbins. They speak around the world, impacting tens of thousands, millions of people in his career so far. Stu, thanks for coming on, bro. I know you're going to add so much value, and I'm excited to see what your future looks like, but I also love what your past has looked like. So
yeah.
Why and how? Why'd you get into this? How'd you get into this? Tell me a story.
Yeah. Great question. So I grew up, honestly, in a great life. Got two great parents, an awesome brother, and grew up in an environment that was very just like positive. My mom's a life coach. And, so I grew up in a good environment and kind of went throughout life as more of like a shy, timid, kind of like quiet person. And it wasn't for me until I got to college. I went to San Diego State that I kind of faced this decision. Like I went to school, and as I was getting dropped off, my mom asked me a question. She said, "What's one thing you want to achieve while you're at college?" And I said, "I just want to come out of my shell," because I felt like I was in this shell my entire life and I didn't know how to get out of it. And so long story short, I went to San Diego State, and about 9 months into being at college, I was introduced to like a network marketing business. And when I got introduced to that, I fully just like headfirst dove into this world of like personal development, growth, like you can become anything you want, and like how to get your mindset to where you need it to be and the strategies to like create the life you want. All this, I just like went down this crazy rabbit hole over basically 4 years as I was in network marketing. And I was so impacted over those 4 years with my life being changed by personal development. And then by also being able to work with other people that were honestly just in a place where they didn't know what they want to do with their life, or, they didn't know the possibilities that existed for them in their own life, and being able to take someone from that to like knowing they can do anything and giving them the strategies to be able to do so. It was just so profound for me, that the impact it had on my life and the impact I could have on others, that after that experience, I kind of spent several years navigating through life, trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And ultimately for me, Tony Robbins had such a large impact on my life from, immersing in his content and things and that forth. And so I learned a concept. It's called modeling. And it's, basically find someone who has what you want. And if you can model them, you can compress decades into years. And so for me, that person was Tony Robbins. And that's kind of led me to what I'm doing today, where I'm, a national trainer for Tony Robbins. And then on the side, I have my own company called Finding Direction. That's basically about helping people figure out what they want to do with their life. So that's a long story, short.
So I love that you picked, I would say he's the face of transformation right now in the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm very, I went when I was about 19 years old to an Unleashed Power Within.
Nice.
And it was amazing. Great experience. I've never been to anything like that before in my life. Yeah. And what was crazy was I saw my friends. I went with probably about 10 people, and my friends were like at the end when we did the fire walk. Yeah. I think that was one of the last days, or the last day if not. And they were stoked. Like they were going crazy. Now, I was already a pro MMA fighter. And so I got into cages with humans that wanted to take my head off.
For real.
So it was a little different experience, but it was amazing to experience the experience. It wasn't theirs. Like them sharing was like, this is the craziest thing in my life. And my thought was like, get into a ring, get a cage with a human.
For real.
That was a little bit more crazy for me. But what I wish, or what I inspire other people is go do every experience, because it's going to give different perspective to be able to overcome fears or challenges in your life, no matter what it is. Even if it isn't the craziest one to me, it still can be an amazing experience for me, which is great. How did you get hooked up with Tony? Like, Tony's the rock star.
Yeah.
That must have been super challenging.
Yeah, I call him the GOAT, the greatest of all time. So yeah, for me, I'm a massively large believer that through effective communication and networking, you can open any door of opportunity. And that basically, like, so many people, they try to figure out what they want to do with their life, or they're already doing something and they want to do something else or whatever. But there's this kind of traditional path that you take of like applying for a job, going through those steps, and maybe you get the job, maybe you get a response, maybe you do, maybe you don't. I think that's like the absolute incorrect way to get a job. And that the true way that you can get any job, open up any door of opportunity that you want, is through meeting the right people, right? Like if you know someone, you can open any door of opportunity. And so I basically had a friend, or I knew someone that introduced me to someone that worked with Tony, that in turn, he introduced me to the person that ended up hiring me. And it was just a matter of, looking in my network and saying, all right, who's in my network and who might know someone that's connected with Tony Robbins, then reaching out to all those people. And then eventually a couple of them got back to me and they were like, oh, I know yada, yada, this guy. And then that guy, was like, hey, I know someone that's actually, they're looking for people to bring onto the team. I'll introduce you to him. And then it was going through the process of, are you qualified? Does this make sense? Can you show up? And it honestly just worked very well in alignment. I'd been following Tony for like 7 years at that point, I believe. And so, I'd been to his UPW, Date with Destiny. I'd done the whole works. So it just kind of was a natural fit for me to come in for the company.
I love that. And he's based, he at least for some of his companies, he's based in San Diego too, correct?
Yeah. His main education company is based in San Diego.
That's awesome. One of my friends used to work for him. So when you started off, because a lot of people are like, I want to be the Tony.
Yeah.
What are those steps? Obviously, you made a lot of phone calls and you got in the door, but a lot of people today, they go, I want to be a motivational speaker. I want to create these courses. I want to sell to millions of people. And they have this thought that it'll just come just from them wanting it to come versus from them strategically putting the right people in place. And obviously, you're one of the strategic people that are thinking like, how do I meet the right people? How do I open the right doors? How do I get the right skill sets? Because you have to practice that stuff before you get in the door. Tony wouldn't hire you if you didn't have the right setup. What were those things like? How challenging once you got the job? How hard did you work just to get to where you're at, where you're speaking in front of, 30, 40, 50 conferences a year?
Yeah, I would say the biggest initial step for me, and if some people are in that point and they're like, yeah, I want to be an entrepreneur, I want to be a motivational speaker, I want to do this, I want to do that. Something that changed my life 7 years ago was I had a mentor, and he said, Stu, a shitty plan today is better than a perfect plan tomorrow, because tomorrow doesn't exist. And so for me, public speaking used to be my biggest fear. I hated public speaking. I did not want to get in front of a room. I was like a shy kid, and it was like the furthest thing from what I thought my life would turn into. And I was pursuing a business that basically you were required to either get good at speaking or you weren't going to be successful. And I had so much drive to succeed in this business that I put together what I call a shitty plan, right? I was like, all right, I need to get good at speaking. I'm not good at speaking by any means. So what's a way I can put together a crappy plan and then just execute that crappy plan, learn from it, and keep going? And so for me, what I did the first time I ever gave a public speech, I guess is what you would technically call it, I wrote a note card and I put the note card in my pocket, right? I practiced it a couple times. I had, people, I think there was maybe 5 people that showed up for the speaking engagement. And halfway through the event, I pulled the note card out of my pocket. I started reading, and I felt I was going to piss my pants. It was just awful. It did not go well. No one left inspired or jazzed to do anything with their life. It was awful. But what happened to me that day is because I took that first step, the next step was a little bit easier. It was still not easy, but I knew what I wanted, right? And for some people out there that, you want to do this, but you may be hesitant. If the why's big enough, then you'll go through these things to get there. And so, I kept giving crappy speeches for probably a couple months. And then eventually got to the point where I got kind of good. And then I got better. And now I guess I'm pretty good. I'm a public speaker for Tony Robbins. But I think the biggest thing is two things, if I could boil it down, is one, asking yourself, what's your crappy plan? And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a crappy plan, but sometimes as an achiever, our mindset is fixed on perfectionism, right? And we go like, oh, I want to start this business, or I want to be a speaker, but I don't have the speech the perfect way, or I don't have this the perfect way, or in the thing that I'm building, there's a couple things in the design part that just aren't quite right. And these are all just excuses, and maybe at the end of the day, ultimately boiling down to fear, right? And you're showing it as perfectionism. But what happens when you say, well, what's my crappy plan, is that just turns your perfectionism part of your brain off. And it's not that it's a crappy plan, but now you don't have to try to be perfect. And so that's the first thing I would say. What's your crappy plan that you could put together? And then number two is find someone that you can model, right? Because you could go out there and with whatever idea you have, you could full force pursue it. And it's better to full force pursue it than not do anything, right? So do that if you want to do that. But if you really want to compress decades into years, that's when it comes to a matter of who's done what you want to do and how can you get connected to them in some way, shape, or form, have a conversation with them, right? And figure out, well, how did they get to where they are? And if you do what they do, say what they say, eventually you're going to get what they got. So that would be kind of the two biggest things I would say when kicking something off.
I love that. Let me ask, going back a little more, when you had your, I guess, crappy plan and you were scared of speaking, what was the fear? So I was born in Northern California. What city were you raised in?
Danville.
Okay.
In Northern California.
Yeah. So I was raised in Cupertino, across the bay.
There we go. Yeah.
We're like brothers from the same area. So I was fearfully scared to speak in front of people because when I was a kid, they labeled me learning disabled. So I created this mindset of when I get in front of people, they're going to laugh and they're going to tease me. They're going to talk shit. And then I started beating people up, and then I went to jail. And then I'm like, I'm not scared anymore. So now I get to bust my ass. So that was my interesting story. What were you scared of when you were like, what was the fear coming from?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for me, where the fear of public speaking came from, there was definitely fear in there, but I grew up, I'm a sibling, I'm a younger brother. And I grew up where my older brother, he was like the stud, he was social, he was outgoing. Like, you know how some people, they just are like, they're not born with the people skills, but they're just like, they figured it out early. They got the people skills down. They can chop it up forever. And they just like got that thing where they just have figured out humans. And so that was like my brother, right? He, in my eyes, like he had it all together. And growing up, I always felt like I was the more shy, kind of introverted and quiet one. And there was like some stories and experiences that I had growing up that kind of built that persona into me. Like sometimes we grow up and maybe someone says like, shut up, you talk too much, or, like stop, like what you're saying doesn't matter. Right. Or something like that sort of happened to me when I was young. And it kind of got into my brain that like people don't want to hear what I have to say. And so I grew up, for a lot of my life, just being that shy, quiet person, because that's just the way I labeled myself. I was like, my brother's a social one. He's going to go do his thing. And I'm going to be more like the shy, quiet, introverted one. And so the fear, like when it really boiled down, and I'm going to try to articulate this in the right way, but I basically grew up unconsciously believing that in order for me to truly get the love I wanted from my dad, and he's a phenomenal person, like he's amazing. I have an incredible relationship with him today. And it's not that I had a bad relationship with him when I grew up, but my perception was skewed. And my perception was that I had to be exactly like my brother in order to get my dad's love. And that was the furthest from the truth. That was not at all the truth. That was just what I perceived to be the truth. And so basically I just kind of grew up in this dilemma of not knowing who I was, feeling like I was the quiet one, And I guess I don't know if that fully answers the question, but that's kind of where my fear
Yeah.
came. And then when I got into the opportunity,